Hey yogis, welcome to Yoga for Dentists. I'm Dr. Josie DeVideo, longtime dentist and certified yoga teacher. Today's episode can also be found on your favorite podcast listening app by searching Yoga for Dentists. I'd like to invite you to hang out with me and other like-minded dental professionals. We can be found on Facebook or Instagram by searching Yoga for Dentists, or you can find us by clicking on the links in the description of this video. Also listed in the description is a freebie created specifically with dental professionals in mind, so don't forget to check that out. And of course, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to this channel. And if you find value in this episode, please share it with your colleagues and leave a comment or like this video. Doing any of those will help Yoga for Dentists reach the dental community. So I had to take a little time off from my podcasting because, as it turns out, I had COVID. Not only did I have COVID, but my whole family of 4 had COVID. And it's somewhat of an interesting story, so I thought I would share it with you today, along with my thoughts on the vaccine and what matters most. So around the 20th of December, I had noticed that I was having a little bit of a runny nose, a little tickle in my throat, but that's not unusual for me because I have seasonal allergies, and I live in California, in Southern California specifically, where we tend to have wind events from time to time. And during that period of time, we were having really crazy winds. The winds kick up a lot of crap in the yard, and I end up having issues with my nose and throat. So for me, it was just a matter of thinking, yep, these are my allergies thanks to the wind, no big deal. So I would have done nothing about it until one morning my son told me that he could not taste the breakfast that I had made him. And I thought, uh-oh. That's a big sign of coronavirus infection. So we quickly went and made our appointments to get tested. The 4 of us got tested. 2 of us tested positive, me and the son who lost his taste. So as if having that diagnosis flipped some kind of switch, all of a sudden we had symptoms. Like we didn't have symptoms before other than those benign ones. And then all of a sudden we had symptoms. So my son's symptoms were basically a sore throat, a stuffy nose that was not productive, just swollen inside, a headache, and some fatigue. No real cough, no real body aches, nothing like that. My symptoms ended up being pretty intense fatigue. I never had a fever. My son never had a fever either. I don't know if I mentioned that, but neither one of us had a fever. I did not have a sore throat. I ended up having a stuffy nose, some pretty intense headaches, which I think are basically migraines. I'm not a migraine sufferer, so I don't know for sure, but it basically felt like I was going to have an aneurysm if the headache got any worse. So headaches were pretty bad. Had intense fatigue and a lot of brain fog, which gets attributed to the cytokine storm. So I pretty much spent several days laying around doing nothing because even though I would have liked to have spent my time reading and laying around, I just could not focus on anything. And therefore, I could not focus on podcasting. I could not focus on the yoga stuff for the groups and Instagram and YouTube. So I was just kind of out of commission. Luckily, I had some backlog content that I could share, but I was not feeling very creative. I was laying around a lot. So my husband and my other son tested negative, but we had not been isolating from them when we were positive because we had already been in contact with them. And in my house, it's not that easy to isolate. So they decided to go get tested again a few days later. And my husband's test came back positive and my son's came back negative. So very unusual. So again, as if flipping a switch, my husband's symptoms came on, and he has asthma, and the symptoms came on pretty strong. So he did have a fever. He had a little bit of a sore throat, a lot of fatigue, some headaches, but really intense body aches, even some neuropathy. Unfortunately, the poor guy had fever for 8 days at home. And, we were in touch with all of our medical professionals, his allergist, our pulmonologist, and they had gotten us some supplemental oxygen so that we could manage at home. But after 8 days of fevering and really intense chills, like those rigors, it's just really bad. We decided it was time to go to the hospital. So, well, by we, I mean he, because COVID restrictions don't allow anybody else to be in the hospital with the patient. So dropped him off at the hospital, and then he proceeded to spend 7 additional days in the hospital. He ended up getting remdesivir and a whole host of other things to help fight the infection. help reduce the viral load, and by 7 days, he was stable enough to come home. Now, his case, even though it was pretty severe, it was pretty severe what I witnessed, is still considered a moderate infection, which to me is mind-boggling because I can't even imagine what severe COVID infection looks like. So since he's been home, his recovery has been somewhat slow, but getting better every day, and he is on the mend. He will be fine. We don't know about any long-term damage yet, so we're still in the process of figuring that out. But in the meantime, we have to decide what we're going to do about the vaccine. So let's talk about vaccines for a second. Now, I'm not one to tell you whether you should or should not get vaccinated. I strongly believe that that is a decision that you have to make based on your medical history and, your own research about the vaccine. Having said that, I'm a dentist in California, and the California Dental Association had asked dentists to participate in administering the vaccine at these really big vaccination clinics. And in order to volunteer for that, you have to take some CDC training. So I did take the training. I am more appreciative of the vaccines and what they are designed to do and what they can do. I also have some questions and a little skepticism about them, but I won't burden you with those. I think you should have your own opinion based on true research. So if you're inclined and you want to see what I studied through the CDC training, those courses are free and everybody has access to them. So I can point you to them if you're interested. So wherever you're listening to this episode today, you can either email me or drop me a comment or DM me in order to have me point you to those CDC trainings for the vaccine so that you can really make an educated decision for yourself. Luckily, my family and I will end up having the antibodies for 90 days. Oh, I don't think I told you. So my son who tested negative ended up having symptoms too. His symptoms were mild. He did not have a fever. The only one of us that had a fever was my husband. No one else had a fever. My son, who originally was negative, ended up having symptoms much like mine: headache, fatigue, stuffy nose, a little bit of cough, but otherwise pretty mild. So it kind of makes me wonder about all those temperature checks that we were doing early on in the pandemic, if they were really worth anything, because just because you don't have a temperature doesn't mean you're not infectious, doesn't mean you're not a carrier. So live and learn, as we're all doing with this virus. Anyway, so my family and I don't have to decide for 90 days. We'll have antibodies statistically for at least that long without reinfection. After the 90 days, you are at a higher risk of getting reinfected, but long-term data is not available, so we don't know for sure. So I don't have to decide just yet how I'm going to approach this vaccine issue. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up is that in the Yoga for Dentists private Facebook group, I had posted a picture with the prompt asking to tell me about a time or to post a picture of yourself in 2020 when you were happy and when nothing else mattered. The picture that I posted was of me and my two sons. It was a recreation of one of my favorite photos of the three of us from when they were little. I had asked them to help recreate that photo for me for Mother's Day in 2020 since we were not able to go out and do our normal celebration. And because they're good sports, they obliged, even though it came out like one of those really funny, awkward family photos. But I love the picture, so I had posted that. And a lot of people replied, and I loved seeing everyone's pictures. There were pictures of people with their pets and out in nature and with their families and sightseeing, traveling, doing some, local activities that you could do during the pandemic. And it occurred to me upon reflection how the pictures that people were posting that represented a time when they were happy and nothing else mattered in 2020 all involved being with people or pets or in places that they love. None of those photos included anyone in scrubs, anyone at work, any big case, any collection goals or production goals. None of it was work-related. It was all life-related. It was all love-related. So my encouragement to you today is, how can you do that? How can we take more of that and build that into our 2021? Of course, we have to work. Of course, work is important. We not only rely on work for our own livelihood, but the people we employ rely on it for their livelihood. So I'm not dismissive of that. But when it comes right down to it, maybe it's not what matters most. Maybe what matters most is who we love, how we love them, and how we experience life. So how can you build that into your 2021? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Feel free to reach out to me through email, josie@yogafordentists.net, or you can click the link in the description of this video, or you can click the link in the description of this episode. Of course, you can always catch me on social media, Instagram or Facebook, @YogaForDentists. Be well, friend.